I ruined my daughter's childhood. She believed Mickey Mouse was her real dad until she turned 15. I even forged letters from him, until she found out the truth. I never thought the lie would go that far. It started as something innocent, a way to give her something to hold on to when everything else was falling apart. My name is Aaron, and if you asked me today what moment I regret most in my life, it wasn't the day I lied to her about who her father was. It was the moment I realized she believed me, fully, completely, with all her heart, and by then it was too late. She was 5 when it started. I was working night shifts at the auto shop, barely keeping things together after her mom left. To this day I don't know where Rachel went. She said she was stepping out for groceries and just never came back. Cops chalked it up to a walkaway. No struggle, no sign of forced entry, just absence, a toothbrush still wet in the holder, her favorite scarf on the kitchen chair. It haunted me for months, but not as much as it haunted Emily. She didn't cry at first. Kids don't always understand loss the same way we do. But after a few days she started asking questions. Where's mommy? When is she coming back? Is she mad at me? I didn't know how to answer. Every bedtime turned into a minefield of made-up reassurances. Until one night, in a moment of exhausted desperation, I blurted something that I still don't fully understand. Mommy went to help Mickey Mouse. He needed her at Disneyland. Emily's eyes lit up. The real Mickey, I nodded. The real one. She's very important there, and he's your daddy now, sweetie. That's what she told me to tell you. I don't know what I expected. Laughter maybe, confusion, but instead, she smiled this wide, believing, grateful smile, and hugged me so tight I almost cried right there on the carpet. From that moment on, it became part of our daily life. I played into it. I told stories of how her dad would send her gifts. At first it was small things, a Mickey figurine from a gas station claw machine, a postcard from a friend's trip to Florida. Then she asked if he could write her letters, and I, idiot that I am, said yes. I wrote one that night, crayon handwriting. A silly cartoon mouse drawn in the corner. Dear Emily, I miss you. Your mommy and I are very busy helping the guests, but I watch over you every night through the stars. Keep being a good girl. Signed, Dad. She slept with that letter under her pillow. Every week she asked for more. I made it a ritual. Tuesday nights, Mickey Mail Day. I'd slide a new envelope under her door and she'd wake up to find it waiting. She'd read them over cereal, giggling, sometimes crying. Once she said, I think he talks to me in dreams too. That was when it started getting weird. At first I chalked it up to imagination. She said things like, Dad told me to take care of the cat, and I'd think, sure, maybe she's connecting the dots from a letter I wrote. But then she started telling me things I hadn't written. Specific things. He said Mommy sings lullabies at night even when I can't hear her. He said not to play by the back fence because it's not safe there. He said you're sad all the time and you should smile more. I never told her about that fence, never told anyone. There was a pit there from when the old septic tank got pulled. I'd meant to cover it years ago but never got around to it, and I was sad all the time but I hid it. Or tried to. Then came the drawing. It was a Sunday. I was cleaning the kitchen when she ran in with a crumpled sheet of paper, waving it like she'd won a contest. Look what Dad showed me, she said. I took the page and stared. It was a crude drawing of a house, our house, but with one detail that made my stomach turn, a black shape in the window of my bedroom just standing there watching. It looked like a man, but it had ears, big round ears. She told me he visited her in dreams, that he told her secrets, that he missed her too, and then one night she said something I'll never forget. He said he's not just a cartoon, Daddy, he's real, and he remembers everything. I asked her what she meant, remembers everything, but she just shrugged and smiled like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Even when you forget, she said, even when you lie, he still remembers. I didn't sleep that night. At first I thought maybe she'd overheard me on the phone. Maybe I said something out loud I didn't mean to. Maybe a neighbor mentioned something strange and she just folded it into the fantasy. But then I found the second drawing. It was slipped under my bedroom door, folded in half like a note passed in school. I assumed it was one of her usual Mickey letters, and I was ready to laugh, until I unfolded it. This time it was the living room, our couch, our TV, the hallway leading to her room. But there, standing beside the couch, was that same shape. Round ears, long shadow, and red eyes, small red dots where its eyes should be. The kind a kid draws when they don't have a black crayon left. I went to her room. She was asleep, dead asleep even, curled up, clutching one of those stuffed Mickeys she loved. I checked her desk for more drawings, for a journal, anything. There was nothing new, just the letters I'd written her, carefully stored in a shoebox she kept under the bed. I told myself it was a coincidence, a phase, a way to cope with what happened to her mom. But the letters kept getting stranger. Daddy says he hears you when you talk in your sleep. Daddy says the basement door isn't supposed to open on its own. Daddy says he left something behind the mirror for me. That last one made me freeze. I didn't have a mirror in her room. She'd always been scared of them. Said she didn't like the idea that there was another her inside it. But in the upstairs hallway just outside her door we had this old oval mirror, antique, slightly warped. Gold trim came with the house. I never paid much attention to it. I went up after she fell asleep, flashlight in hand, and looked behind it. There was nothing at first, dust, a spiderweb. And then, at the bottom right corner of the frame, I noticed the wood was loose, just slightly. I pulled it back. Tucked behind the backing was a small folded piece of paper. I unfolded it. It was child's handwriting. But it wasn't Emily's. I see you when you lie. No signature, no drawings, just that. I confronted her the next morning. I tried to stay calm. I asked if she was writing notes to scare me, if maybe a friend was helping, if someone was sneaking into the house. She looked genuinely confused, but it was Daddy, she said. I didn't write it. He said you needed to see it. I was losing it. I knew I was. Stress, exhaustion, guilt, all boiling over. I canceled my shift that night and sat her down. I told her the truth. There is no Mickey, not really. I mean, there is, but he's just a character. A costume. Someone in a suit. He's not your father. I made that up. Your mom. She left. I don't know why. I don't know where she went, and I didn't know how to tell you. So I made up a story. I'm sorry, Emily. She didn't cry. She just stared at me, eyes wide and flat. And then she said, you shouldn't have said that out loud. I felt a chill, deep and electric. What do you mean? He hears everything, Daddy. Even when he's not here, I didn't know what to say. That night I took the letters, all of them, and burned them in the sink. I locked her door. I slept on the couch with the lights on. But still, sometime after 3 a.m., I woke up. The TV was on static, the basement door was open, and drawn in the fog on the inside of the living room window, backwards so it faced inward, were 4 words I haven't told anyone about until now. She wasn't yours anyway. I didn't move. I couldn't. My legs were numb, like they'd turned to stone beneath the blanket. I sat there on the couch, staring at that message in the window, watching the fog slowly fade with the warmth of the room. She wasn't yours anyway. The words disappeared, but they etched themselves into my memory like frostbite. I told myself someone was messing with me. Maybe Rachel had come back. Maybe she was unstable, watching us from outside. Maybe she wanted revenge for something I didn't even understand. I crept to the door and locked it. Double lock, chain. I turned off the TV. No channels, just dead static. It hadn't even been plugged in. I went upstairs to check on Emily. My hand shook as I turned the doorknob. Her door was still locked. I had the only key. She was asleep. Same position, curled tight, breathing steady, but the window in her room was open just slightly, and her stuffed Mickey was sitting upright on the sill, looking out into the yard like it had been placed there carefully. I took it and shoved it in the closet, slammed the window shut. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, Emily acted like nothing had happened. She was humming at breakfast, pouring milk over her cereal, smiling like always. I asked her if she remembered anything weird from the night before. She shook her head. You looked scared, she said. Daddy, did you see him again? That was the first time she said it like that. Not Mickey, not my dad, just him. I tried to get her to talk more, but she got quiet. Then she looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her eyes before, pity. Like she felt sorry for me. That week I called a therapist. I didn't know how to explain what was happening without sounding insane, so I didn't. I said she was having some trouble separating fantasy from reality, that her mom had left and she had been developing some coping mechanisms. We got an appointment for the following Thursday. It never happened, because that Tuesday night, the letters came back. I had locked every drawer, thrown away every crayon. I hadn't bought envelopes in weeks. I even disconnected the mailbox so nothing could be left inside. But when I woke up that morning, there was an envelope sitting on the kitchen table. Same childish handwriting. But the return address had changed. It didn't say Disneyland. It didn't say Mickey. It said, Between the Walls. I didn't open it. I burned it in the sink with tongs. That night, Emily woke me up screaming. I ran to her room. She was sitting straight up in bed, eyes wide open but unfocused. She kept repeating one word. Wrong, wrong, wrong. I tried to hold her, but she wouldn't let me touch her. She just pointed toward the corner of the room. He said, You lied. You broke it. It was perfect before I turned on every light. I searched the room top to bottom. There was nothing there. I even checked behind the walls, ripped open a piece of drywall near the closet, nothing but insulation. But later, when I was throwing out the pieces of broken sheetrock, I saw something wedged deep behind the studs. Something that didn't belong there. I used a hanger to pull it free. It was another letter. You were never supposed to tell her. She belonged to the story. That's when I knew this wasn't just about grief, or a child's imagination, or my own unraveling. Something had rooted itself in our lives. Something that fed on belief, on story, on make-believe taken too far. And I had created the opening. I had built the stage. Mickey was never real, but something took the role I offered it. And now it didn't want to give her back. I started trying to undo everything. Every letter I wrote her, I cataloged it in a notebook, trying to trace what I'd said, what I might have accidentally suggested, what she could have clung to. I found 47 of them. Some were as innocent as brush your teeth, others were stranger. Like, the stars are doors when you know how to knock. I couldn't remember writing that one. I couldn't remember thinking it. I tried to distract Emily. took her out of school for a week, told the principal she needed a mental reset, which wasn't even a real excuse, but they let it go. We drove north, booked a motel near a lake. I turned off her tablet, we went fishing, sat by the water. I watched her closely. She was quiet the first 2 days, kept looking behind herself like she thought someone was following us. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, "He doesn't like the lake." I didn't ask who he was. I knew. On the third night she woke me up again. Not screaming this time, just standing at the foot of my bed, pale, hair limp, eyes black with no reflection. It was like she wasn't in there. I sat up and whispered, "Emmy?" She tilted her head, just slightly. Then she said, "You shouldn't have taken her away from him. Now you owe something back." The way she said it, voice flat, deliberate, a rhythm that wasn't hers. It made my skin crawl. She wasn't sleepwalking, she was performing, repeating something rehearsed. She turned and walked back to her room. The next morning, she didn't remember it. We cut the trip short. Back home, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Rachel's sister. We hadn't spoken since the night Rachel left. I always suspected her family thought I was hiding something, that maybe I'd done something to make Rachel leave. But to her credit, she answered the phone, sounded surprised but not cold. I told her I needed to know if Rachel had ever mentioned anything strange before she disappeared. Any childhood stories, fantasies, beliefs. She was silent for a moment. Then she asked, "Has Emily started drawing him yet?" I froze. "What?" "The one with the ears," she said quietly. "Rachel used to draw him too. We thought it was just a thing she made up, like an imaginary friend. Only she said he came from the crawl space. Between the walls it felt like the air had been sucked from the room." I had never told anyone about that phrase. I asked her what she meant. She said Rachel used to claim there was a man with round ears and a smile too big who lived in the space behind the walls and watched over her at night. But when their mom took her to a child psychologist, the drawings stopped. For a while. I told her everything. The Mickey story, the letters, the notes, the mirror. There was silence again. Finally she said, "Aaron, I think it followed your daughter. I don't think it ever wanted Rachel." That was the first time I thought about it in that way. Like whatever this thing was, it needed a story to attach itself to. A narrative, a belief so strong, so pure, that it could build a shape around it. Mickey was just a costume it wore. I gave it a name. Emily gave it life, and now it wanted permanence. I started researching. Deep dives into forgotten forums, old Reddit threads about tulpa manifestations, childhood hallucinations that become independent. I found one post, years old, almost buried, from a woman in Ohio. She described a cartoon-like man that her son spoke to through the walls. He claimed he drew the dreams, that he was the editor of our house. I messaged her. The account was deleted. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow. Then one day, I came home from work and found every letter I had ever written to Emily laid out on the living room floor, in perfect order. Not just the ones I saved, the ones I burned, the ones I shredded. Even one I had flushed. I picked one up. It was still slightly damp. Emily was upstairs. I ran to her. She was drawing not Mickey this time. A man in a black suit, wide grin, long white gloves, and behind him a girl. Smaller hand in his, her face scratched out. I asked her who that was. She said, without looking up, "That's me." From before. I asked, "Before what?" She looked at me. And for just a moment she was crystal clear. No fog, no trance, no creepy voice, just "My daughter, before you started lying to me." And then she went back to coloring. I didn't know what she meant. I wanted to believe she was talking about the Mickey letters, the fantasy one built for her, but there was something behind her eyes when she said it. Like she wasn't talking about that lie. Like she meant something older, something underneath it all. I didn't sleep that night. I sat outside her room listening. Around 2:40 a.m. I heard her whispering. I leaned in. She wasn't on the phone, she wasn't playing, she was talking to someone. "No, he doesn't know yet. I think he suspects. I don't think we should show him the door." Then silence, and a low hum like wind through a narrow pipe. I opened the door fast. She was lying in bed, still, eyes open. But she was breathing like she'd been running. I asked who she was talking to. She said, "I wasn't. He was talking through me." I lost it. I called the therapist, begged them to move up the appointment. They squeezed us in for that Friday. I didn't care if they thought I was unstable. I was ready to admit I needed help. I would have said anything if it meant getting Emily away from whatever this was. The therapist's name was Dr. Ko. Kind woman, calm voice. She spoke directly to Emily. Didn't rush her. Emily didn't say much at first, just sat there, legs swinging, hugging a stuffed animal. But then Dr. Ko asked, "Who do you talk to when you're alone?" Emily didn't answer. She just pulled something out of her backpack and handed it to her. It was a drawing, another one, only this time it wasn't in crayon, it was charcoal. Heavy black lines, smudged, sharp strokes like she was angry. It showed a man, no eyes, just holes, with his hand resting on the roof of our house. He was smiling, but his mouth went too wide and it stretched past the edges of his face. In the window you could see a girl crying. Dr. Ko looked disturbed but tried not to show it. "Emily, who is this?" Emily answered softly, "That's the man who lives in stories. The one Daddy pretended to be." I could tell Ko was trying to tread lightly. She said, "And what does he want?" Emily's voice dropped to keep pretending. Forever. We left early that night. I found something tucked into Emily's pillowcase. It wasn't a drawing. It was a Polaroid, but it wasn't one we took. It was Emily, asleep in bed, but from the outside of the window, like someone had been standing in the yard, her face was peaceful. But in the bottom right corner of the frame, just barely visible, was the reflection of something in the glass, big ears too round to be human. I checked the backyard. Nothing. I checked the neighbor's cameras, no movement. But when I looked at the timestamp on the photo, I froze. It was dated 3 years earlier, before I ever wrote the first letter, before Rachel left, before Emily ever asked who her dad was, and then I remembered something I hadn't let myself think about in years. Rachel once told me, early in our relationship before Emily was born, that sometimes she felt like someone was watching her sleep, not from inside the house, but from outside, from the trees. She said it started when she was a kid, that once when she was 7 she woke up and saw her window wide open, and a pair of gloved hands resting on the sill, but there were no footprints, no evidence, just a smell like burnt plastic and wet fur. She told me that and I laughed, and when she got quiet and said, "Please don't ever lie to our kid, not even for fun," I promised I wouldn't, and I did. I lied, and something stepped into the lie, something old, something that knew Rachel, that had waited, that had been patient enough to wear a cartoon face until I handed it my daughter on a silver platter. I called Co, told her we needed help. She recommended an inpatient evaluation, said Emily might need intensive observation. She framed it delicately, but I knew what she meant. But the night before we were supposed to go, Emily vanished. I checked her room at 6 a.m. Her bed was empty. No sign of struggle, window locked, closet untouched, but there on the bed was a letter, not handwritten, typed, printed on plain white paper, center aligned, bolded in a font I didn't recognize. You can't unwrite the story once it's been read. No signature, no date, just those words, and taped to the bottom was a Disney admission ticket, one that expired in 1991. I ran through the house yelling her name, every room, every closet, under every bed, the basement, the attic. I checked the locks, the windows. Nothing was broken, nothing was forced. She had simply vanished. I called 911. The operator asked if there was a custody issue, if maybe Rachel had come back and taken her. I said no, Rachel was gone, officially missing for nearly 10 years. The dispatcher said someone would be out within the hour. I hung up and sat on the floor of her room. My ears were ringing, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept staring at that ticket. I flipped it over. On the back, scribbled faintly in pencil, was a single word. Tomorrowland. I don't know what I was expecting, but it felt pointed, specific. The police came, they searched the neighborhood, dogs even, nothing. There were no footprints in the backyard, no sign of entry. It was like she had dissolved into thin air. I tried to tell them about the letters, the stories, the drawings. I even handed them the Polaroid, but they just looked at me like I was broken. The lead officer said quietly, "I think you need to get some rest, sir." They left that night. No Amber Alert, no urgent bulletin, just a missing persons report and a card with a detective's name. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor holding her drawings, flipping through them like a flipbook. The same figure kept appearing. The ears, the gloves, the wide mouth. But in one of the later drawings, I hadn't noticed before, there was something new, a gate. A tall, ornate gate with an arch over the top. And scribbled on it in red crayon were the words, "Where stories sleep." The next morning, I drove to a place I never thought I'd go, Disneyland. It was a long shot. Ridiculous even. But the ticket, the drawings, the fact that I had created this story around that place, it all pointed there. I kept telling myself I wasn't expecting to find her, that I just needed something to do. But deep down I was already past the point of logic. At the park, everything looked normal. Families smiling, children laughing, music playing. But it felt wrong, like a set, like all of it was designed to distract. I wandered for hours, every ride, every corner. I found myself standing in front of the entrance to Tomorrowland, and then I saw her. Emily. She was standing by a bench near the Orbitron ride. Same clothes she wore when she vanished. Same shoes. Her hair was tied in a ribbon she hadn't worn in months. A red one, like the first time I took her to a carnival when she was 3. I ran to her, screamed her name. She looked at me, blank expression, like she didn't recognize me at first. Then, slowly she smiled. "Hi, Daddy." I knelt down and hugged her. I didn't even ask how she got there. I just held her, but when I pulled away I noticed something. Her pupils weren't dilated. Her skin was cool, and her voice when she spoke again was slower, measured. "I told him you'd come." I asked who. She tilted her head toward the Astro Blaster's entrance. "That's his house," she said. "He lives where the lights never go off." I carried her out of the park. No one stopped me. No security guard asked questions. It was like no one saw her, or me. I got her home. She ate dinner, told me she was tired, went to bed. But here's the thing, she was different. She stopped asking for letters. She didn't draw anymore. She slept with the lights off, something she'd never done before, and when I kissed her goodnight, she didn't kiss back. She just smiled, that same blank smile. I watched her for a week. She went to school, spoke when spoken to, laughed at appropriate moments. but none of it felt real, like someone was piloting her. One night I looked through her backpack. There was a notebook inside. Not her usual school one, a small leather one with unlined pages. The cover had a strange embossing, a shape that looked like a keyhole inside an ear. Inside were drawings. Dozens of them, not of him. Not anymore, but of me, sleeping, watching TV, sitting on the porch, page after page, all from different angles. Some from high up, like from the ceiling, some from outside the house, and on the final page, a sketch of me sitting at her desk flipping through a notebook, with one line written in block letters beneath. The story has to continue. That night, I didn't go to sleep. I sat in the hallway outside her bedroom, watching her door like a soldier on watch. I don't know what I expected. Some shadow to slide out, a second voice behind hers, a sudden scream, but there was nothing. Silence until just after 3:17 a.m. Her bedroom light flicked on. I stood up, heart pounding, and reached for the doorknob, but before I touched it, it opened on its own. Emily stood there, pale, calm. Her eyes met mine, and she didn't look surprised to see me, like she'd been expecting it. "I have to go," she whispered. "It's my turn to keep the door open." "What door?" I asked, stepping in front of her. "Emily, what are you talking about?" She pointed to the closet. I'd opened that closet 100 times. It was small, cramped, full of toys and boxes of old clothes, but now it looked deeper, like the back panel had been removed, like it led into darkness, and there was a sound, faint, rhythmic, like something humming, not a song, just tone, almost like a broken calliope or a carousel stuck in slow motion. I slammed the closet door shut. Emily didn't resist. She just blinked slowly and turned back toward her bed. "Don't let the story close, Daddy," she said as she climbed under the covers. "If it ends, it'll have to find a new one. And maybe next time it won't ask first." I didn't sleep. Again the next day I called in sick, sat in my car outside the house and stared at the upstairs window. That night I did something desperate. I drove to Rachel's old childhood home, the one she grew up in before we met. Her sister still owned it. She wasn't home, but I still had an old key. I told myself I just needed to see something. I don't know what. Evidence, patterns, echoes. The house was empty, cold. I walked down the hall to Rachel's childhood bedroom. It still had the old paint on the walls, faded yellow, faint outlines of old sticker glue. But something made me freeze. There was a hole in the wall behind her dresser, carefully patched but visible. I moved the dresser, peeled back the plaster. Inside was a small wooden box. Inside the box was a bundle of folded paper, letters not addressed to Rachel, from her to the man in the wall. They were childlike, sweet almost. She asked him what his favorite food was, what cartoons he liked. She said she liked when he told her stories while she slept, that she didn't mind when he came close to her ear at night, but asked if he could stop breathing so loud because it tickled. The last letter was different. "I'm sorry," it said. "I can't tell Mommy about you. She cries too much now. But if I have a daughter one day, I'll tell her your stories too. And then you won't be alone anymore." It was signed with a red wax seal. I didn't sleep. I didn't even go home. I sat in the car until sunrise. When I walked into the house, Emily was already awake, eating dry cereal out of the box like nothing happened. But the house felt different, like it wasn't just ours anymore. Like something had moved in. That night, I watched her draw again. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. The figure was back, but now it wasn't outside the house. It was in the room with her, sitting at her desk, lying under her bed, holding her hand, and on the last page of that night's work, she drew a circle with 5 stick figures inside. One had my name under it, one had hers, the other 3 were blank. When I asked her what it was, she said, "It's the cast list." "A cast list for what?" "For the ending." I didn't ask more. I didn't want to know, but that night the letter came back, typed. No envelope placed under my pillow. Act 3 begins tomorrow. No name, no signature, just that. The next morning things shifted subtly, but enough that I noticed. The light in the hallway didn't turn on when I flicked the switch, not because the bulb was dead, but because the switch wasn't there. Just smooth wall where it used to be. I thought I was losing it. But then I checked the breaker box. The hallway light was still labeled and functional. The wire existed. The switch just didn't. I ran my hand over the wall again. Nothing. No seams, no plate. It was like it had never been there. I walked upstairs, heart pounding, and opened Emily's door. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed, awake, hands folded in her lap. She looked up at me and said, "Did the hallway feel smaller to you?" I didn't answer. "Sometimes," she continued, "he takes things away. It's how he balances the story. One truth for one lie." "What lie?" I asked. She smiled. "You lied about who I was." I felt cold. "Emily, I never. You said I was yours." She tilted her head. "I think that was your biggest mistake." That day I called in a favor from an old friend, a guy that I first used to work with at the shop who now did private security. He owed me. I asked him to come by that night and sit in a car across the street, just to watch the house, watch the windows, keep an eye on things. His name was Gabe, ex-military, sane, logical. He arrived around 7 p.m. and parked 2 houses down, pretending to scroll on his phone. I stayed inside and played it normal. Cooked dinner, watched TV. Emily went to bed around 9. At 9:42 p.m., I got a text from Gabe. "Who's the guy in the attic window?" "We didn't have an attic window." I called him immediately. He picked up, already breathing heavy. I swear to God, man, I saw someone move upper floor right side near the peak. It was fast, just a flash, like someone ducked down. I went outside, flashlight in hand, and looked. Nothing, no window, no opening, just the sloped shingles of the roof. But as I turned to go back in, I noticed something on the ground near the porch. It was a crumpled up glove, white. 3 black stripes across the back, the kind you'd find on a Mickey Mouse costume, only older, yellowed, stiff with grime. I picked it up and felt my stomach turn. There was something inside the glove. I turned it over and a tooth fell out, human small. I threw up in the sink when I came back out. Gabe was gone. I called his phone, straight to voicemail, drove up the street, no car, nothing, like he'd never been there. I filed a missing persons report the next day. But when the officer asked who I was reporting and I gave them Gabe's full name, she blinked and said, "That name's not coming up in any system." "You sure you have the spelling right?" I sent her a picture. One we took in 2014 at a barbecue. She scanned it, frowned. "Sir, this might sound strange, but this person looks edited in. Look here, the shadows don't match." I looked, she was right, the shadow under Gabe's feet bent the wrong direction. I went home. Emily was outside, sitting on the grass, picking petals off a daisy. She looked up at me and said, "He wasn't supposed to be in the story. That's why he had to go." That night I found something new. The closet in my room, never used, always empty, was open. Inside, taped to the back wall, was a blueprint, drawn in graphite on yellowed paper. It was a floor plan of our house, but not exactly. There were extra rooms, extra hallways, a basement staircase that didn't exist in real life. And in the center of it all, circled in red, was a room labeled Author's Room. Below that, in smaller letters, it read, "Where the lie became real." I didn't sleep. Instead, I went to my desk and began writing everything down. Every detail I could remember, every drawing, every word. I thought if I could get ahead of it, capture the shape of the thing, I could control it, understand it, even end it. But when I got to the part where I told Emily Mickey was her dad, the document vanished. I'm not exaggerating, the screen blinked, the file closed. I opened the folder, it wasn't there. Recycle bin, empty. Auto recovery, nothing. Instead, a new folder had appeared on my desktop. It was called Casting. Inside were photos, hundreds. Every person who'd ever been in our house, friends, delivery drivers, repairmen, me, and Emily. Only in hers the timestamp was yesterday, and she wasn't smiling. She was behind glass like a museum exhibit, and in the reflection of the glass, the thing with the ears. Its gloves pressed flat to the pane, its grin as wide as ever. The next morning I decided to leave, not just the house, the town. I packed bags, booked a motel 3 hours out, and told Emily we were going on an adventure. She didn't argue. That was the first red flag. She always asked where we were going, what snacks she could bring, if there'd be cartoons at the hotel. Not this time. Just nodded, zipped up her coat, and walked to the car without a word. We didn't talk the whole drive. I kept checking the rearview mirror. Not for cars, for her. The way she sat in the back seat, too still. Her reflection in the glass didn't match her movements. I started catching tiny delays, blinks out of sync, a shadow where her head should have been. At one point I nearly veered off the road. We got to the motel just before sunset. I checked us in under a fake name, paid cash, took the key to room 203. Small place, faded carpet, no cameras in the lot. Perfect. I ordered food, left the TV on. Let her watch cartoons while I pretended to scroll my phone. Around 10:30, I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and opened the vent behind the toilet. Inside I'd hidden a burner phone. Bought it weeks ago when things started feeling irreversible. I texted Rachel's sister, me, "It's happening again. I think it's almost done. I need you to come, please." She responded 3 minutes later, her, "I'm already here." I froze, typed back, "What do you mean?" No reply. I walked out of the bathroom. Emily was gone, the door was still chained. The window shut, but the closet door, the one that hadn't been there before, was wide open. Inside was a staircase. I didn't think. I ran down. It wasn't stairs anymore, not wood or carpet, just pitch black under my feet, like walking on forgotten stage floor. I reached a corridor, walls made of unfinished plywood, covered in drawings. Not mine, not hers. Drawings from other children, different paper, different handwriting, all depicting him. Some were old, decades old, faded, burnt. One had a date in the corner, 1954. I turned the corner and found a door above it, a crooked sign made of cardboard and duct tape. Author's Room, quiet on set. I opened it. Inside was a small room lit by a single swaying bulb, a typewriter in the middle, a reel-to-reel tape machine in the corner, walls covered in photographs, me, Emily, Rachel, the house, drawings, Mickey ears, old TV static, and sitting at the typewriter was Emily. Not the Emily I'd brought to the motel, an older Emily. 16, maybe 17, pale, smiling. She turned and looked at me. "I knew you'd come." I stepped back. "Emily," she nodded. "The first one, the original." She stood up and walked toward me slowly. "He made me write it all. He said the only way to keep the story alive is to bring in more writers, more drafts. He needed new material." She held out her hand, and behind her from the dark stepped another figure, the Emily I'd raised, still 8 years old, still in her coat, but she didn't look at me. She looked through me. Behind her, one by one, more children stepped out, all different, all silent, all holding papers, pages filled with writing, drawings, words like "Daddy lied and he wears our memories," and "You're just the actor now." I backed away. Older Emily spoke again. "You thought you were the author, but you were always just the narrator." I turned to run, but the hallway was gone, only black, only the stage. And from the darkness a voice echoed. "Scene reset." Everything blinked. I woke up in my house, daylight, my phone beside me, buzzing. A text: "Rachel just left the store. Be home in 10. Emmy wants chicken nuggets." I stared at it, checked the calendar. 2014. I walked to the hallway mirror, looked at my face, younger. I heard giggling upstairs. A child's voice. "Emily, 5 years old." I walked slowly up the stairs. She ran past me, holding a stuffed Mickey, laughing. I reached her room. Inside on the bed was a single envelope. I opened it. "You told the story too well." There was no signature, only a smudge, 3 black lines, a glove print, and under it, faint but visible, "We'll write again soon."